The following program may contain content not suitable for all audiences. It includes some coarse language and adult themes.
You're listening to Help Me, I'm a Comedian, the show where we ask a comedian to come in and share an issue of pain from their life while a psychologist tries to help them through. I'm Ashwin Segkar, and you're joined now by comedian Hayden Foote and psychologist Dr Rachel Hannam. Hayden, can we start with your story?
I was about 15 years old, and I took a sick day from school, and I remember watching either Oprah or Dr. Phil, and I'm laying there, and I've got a big bag of Cheetos, and I just remember sitting there and looking at them going, I don't want to eat these, because I was a furious eater. I'd eat so much, and I was overweight. I was 96 kilos, but I was 6'3", I think, so I've always been quite tall from a young age. And I just remember this sort of internal battle I had with, let's not eat these Cheetos. And so I sat there and stared at them, and I'd just watch, and I'd keep resisting them and refuse to open them. And I was like, I did it. I beat it. And that was the day I started getting this weird idea around food and controlling what I ate. I was a binge eater. I cooked a lot myself, latchkey kid generation. I'd go and I've had full access to the kitchen. And so I ate a lot, and I was just never watching my weight. I was athletic. But from that day, I decided, no, I'm gonna lose weight. And I stopped eating. I'd managed that for a short space of time. And then I think Mum and Dad came home with KFC one night, and I ate it all, and I felt gross. And I thought, I'll just throw this up. I'll just go and throw this up. Surely it can't be that hard. And we lived on a big property, so I went for a walk out the back, and then just fingers down the throat, Bob's your uncle. Did it. And I was like, great. I didn't eat the KFC then, right? And then I thought to myself, I could just do this. I could just do this all the time. So the goal was eat as little as possible, but when I stuffed up, it was that, go back, and then I'd throw it up. I used to keep breakfast down, but nothing else that day. So if I did eat, I would throw it up, and but rarely would I. And as a means to hide it from my mum and dad, I started getting very fixated on exercise. And so I had all my school books in my bag, weighed about 9-10 kilograms. And so after school, I would chuck on my backpack, and I would run 4 kilometers from school to my mother's work. And this continued on and on. Part of the reason I wanted to talk about this is that even then I would read magazines, and they would say, females with eating disorders, 70% of females, or, these really high figures. And then there would always be a figure and 15% of males. And still to this day, I'm now 38 years old. I never see stories about these males, never heard stories about these males, knowing full well this is my story. I lost, so 96 kilos is when it started. I have a photo on my balcony in particular where I weighed 71 kilos.
Did people start asking questions?
Mum and Dad did in the end, but I felt I got caught out one time because I left remnants in the toilet. I think everyone suspected, because the weight I was skinny. Part of the reason I wanted to bring the photos is I've got some photos where I look amazing. In addition to that, I was running, I was sunbathing, so I was tanned, I was muscly, I looked good. I wanted girls to like me. And I had an incident when I was about 13 that affected me in a way that I felt that changed the way that all people at school, or all people who knew me, saw me. And I saw this as a fix to that. I saw this as, if I can make myself irresistible, then that thing, people forget about that thing.
Can you tell us about what happened there?
I was at a underage nightclub called The Fridge in New Lynn in Auckland on a Friday night, as me and my friend did nearly every Friday night, and I ran into a girl that I used to go out with. She was a bit older than me. And we started hooking up, and then she grabs my hand, she walks over to my friend, who's my best friend still to this day, and shakes me and says, "Ask him." I looked at him with a big smile on my face. And I said, "Do you have a condom?" And he smiles back and he goes, "Yes, I do." Gives me a condom, and we go into the toilets where everyone wants to lose their virginity, public toilets at an underage nightclub. And tried, these days say unsuccessfully, but there was penetration. But it was minor because we were interrupted by some dude banging on the door saying, "I'm going to throw up, I'm going to throw up." And so that ended. And I was just like, damn, didn't get to do it properly. And we walk out of this bathroom, and then the girl's best friend is standing there, and so the girl says to her best friend, "Guess what we just did?" And she goes, "What?" So, "We just had sex." And right in front of me, this girl goes, "You are going to regret this so much in the morning." And that was it. Then they disbanded, and I went back to my mates, high-fiving everyone, like not telling everyone, but my mate who gave me the condom, I was like, "Yeah, dude, oh my God, I'm a man now, I'm a man now." Within about 5 minutes of that happening, someone comes over to me and says, "Hey, there's a bunch of guys over there who said that you've just raped this chick. You need to get out of here." And as I look up, I see sets of eyes on me. And you can feel the fear all of a sudden. And then my mate goes, "You got to go." And then they start chasing me. And they start chasing me. Look, there they go, goosebumps. And they start chasing me. And this was the first instance of, if I was to guess, 4 years of running away from parties when people recognized me. I didn't talk to anyone about it. Word got around really quickly because this girl, for whatever reason, wanted to save face. One day in particular, I had another sick day from school. And when I came back to school the next day, people were coming up to me saying, "Are you all right? Are you all right?" I was like, "Why? What happened?" What? They said, 7 guys from Kelston Boys High School came down to school yesterday looking to find you to beat your head in. That really started to hollow me out. It changed who I was. I was a kid. I think part of the reason why it stuck when this girl said this to these guys, I was 6 foot tall. At 13 years old, I was 6 foot tall. I was a big guy. So people wouldn't have that idea of they're beating up a kid.
Yeah.
It's not like they're beating, like I didn't even have hair under my arms. I'd never even masturbated before.
This is one of the problems with being a tall kid is people expect more of you and treat you as if you're older.
Yeah.
And you didn't tell any adults, any people who might have been able to help and support or protect you?
No, man, it was 1995. Yeah. I thought she had nothing to do with it because I remember getting home that night and saying to my mate, "Oh my God, I had sex tonight. How incredible." Like I really thought she had nothing to do with it. And over time I worked out that she very much did. And then I was 13. I was so angry at her. I was so angry at her for years and years and years. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to make of it. It was a very confusing time.
Apart from feeling very confused and very angry, did you feel shame? Did you feel like somehow you'd done the wrong thing or this was your fault? Did you feel bad about yourself?
Look, I didn't at the time because I knew the truth.
Not at the time. I mean afterwards.
Many years later. Like when the memory started to fade. And so I'm talking like 18, 20 years old, when that memory started to fade a bit and I sort of go, could I have done something differently? Did I do something wrong? I questioned myself then, but the trauma of those eyes looking at me locked that memory in for a very, very long time, as very crystal clear. There's still elements of it that I could describe. I could describe sounds of things that happened that night because of that trauma.
The reason I ask about shame is people don't necessarily know exactly what that word means, but it is that sense of a loss of belonging, a loss of acceptability.
Oh, yeah.
And we know from the research that shame is highly correlated with eating disorders.
Such an interesting story, what you're saying, because I come from South Asia and in the Middle East where people talk sometimes about honour-based violence, but you think the West, there's no concept of honour-based violence, except in your case, they wanted to redeem her honour by chasing you, and it's such a unique position for someone in Western culture to find themselves in for many years.
I understand that. The idea of beating up a rapist sounds fantastic to me. Like, especially when you don't know that, like, even half of the people that I think that happened didn't even know her. Even at their school, whatever. I just think that it was that concept of we get the chance to beat a rapist today.
You're listening to Help Me, I'm a Comedian, where we ask a comedian to come in and share an issue or a story of pain from their life while a psychologist tries to help them through. I'm Ashwin Segkar, and you're listening now to comedian Hayden Foote and psychologist Dr Rachel Hannam. Can you talk about how you changed during that period?
No one trusted me. Or I felt no one trusted me, is probably more to the point. And again, it didn't stop me, because I'm an extrovert, it didn't sort of stop me being the loud person that I was. But I just felt that people would look down on me. And it started this process of me having to... I felt like I had to double down on my extroversion, and because I knew I was right. I knew I'd told the truth. I knew I had nothing to fear. Yeah. But it was, how often do I get to tell myself that and have other people not believe it? The thing is, if she had gone to the police, great. That would have been me being able to talk to someone. That could have been, that night could have been spoken about. Yes. People could have been asked. And granted, no one's going to know what went on behind the door of that toilet. That's between her and I guess. But it would have given me a chance to at least state my case. And no one ever gave me that chance. No.
Do you think there's a connection between what happened to you that night and how it played out over time and the bulimia, anorexia?
Yeah, 100%. It felt like my life was out of control. I played sports. I had a lot of routine in place, but where there was no routine, I started to fall apart a little bit. And
internally.
Yeah, not knowing who I was, just... the version of me I know, now that's not the version that anybody else believes.
Yes.
That was hard. When I started losing weight, I started to look in the mirror and go, I look fantastic. I got abs.
Hayden looks fantastic already, so I can't imagine hot Hayden.
It's the perm, mate. It's the perm.
But you started to feel a little bit of self-esteem that compensated probably for how bad you were feeling, and a sense of control.
Oh, 100%.
Did it affect your relationships with other people in any way? The trauma of that night and afterwards?
It's made trusting women has been a really tough deal. But in the same time, I surround myself with women more. So the women who I do develop trust with, those are the ones I stick to. Because I also don't trust men, because they were the ones who chased me out of the bloody venue.
She wrote you a letter sometime later. Can you tell us about that?
I was hell-bent on revenge. I wanted her to be standing in the street one day in total chaos going, what the hell has happened to my life? And I wanted to be the cause of that because I blamed her. She was 16 years old. I was 13 years old. So I set a plan. My brother told me, if you're going to ever take revenge on somebody, wait 10 years because then no one will ever think it's you. I remember I was living in Canada in 2005 and it just popped into my head. I'm like, oh, it's been 10 years. And luckily, a 23-year-old me could look at the situation a little bit differently to 13 to 20-year-old me. And I looked at that and I thought, no, you know what? I'm going to track her down. And luckily, this was when social media was just kicking off. And there was a New Zealand group called Old Friends. And I found her on there and I've got an email address. And so I wrote her an email. And that email was pretty kind on my end, I thought. Because I wrote to her and I said, hey, it's been 10 years. I want you to know that I had a plan to get you back. I knew where you worked. I knew where you lived. I knew everything that I wanted to know about you. And it has only just recently occurred to me that you were just a 16-year-old girl. And you made a really bad decision. that affected my life pretty horribly. And I told her about my eating disorders, and I told her, like, I'd run into her a couple of times and lost my cool when I confronted her because she pretended not to know who I was, and talked about that. At the end of the email, I just said to her, do me a favor, send me back a blank email, because we didn't have read receipts back then. Send me back a blank email just so that I know you've read what I have to say. But what I put in there was, I forgive you. I totally forgive you, because a 16-year-old you can't be expected to make that decision smartly. Yes, I wish you had have done it differently. Absolutely, I wish you had have turned around and said something different. But ultimately, here we are many years later, and I forgive you. And I want you to write back to me and tell me that you've read what I had to say. And I got back from her a 2-page, probably the most heartfelt apology I've ever received from anybody in my life. And it was amazing. It was amazing, because I said there were moments where the memory started to distort a bit, and I'm going, did I, is there something more I could have done? Did I contribute to it in any way? And when she then disclosed to me, yeah, I've had eating disorders as well. I feel really bad. It's affected me really badly. I read it all. It was amazing. It felt great to hear her admit it. And I said to her, please make sure if you ever hear my name pop up in conversation that you just take a stand now and just say that, start telling people, that's a really good guy. That guy's a good guy. That's what was taken away from me, man.
Yes.
That apology was fantastic. And
very healing.
It was, but not as much as I wanted it to be. I thought it was going to be this complete weight off the shoulders,
right.
And it wasn't. Ever win an argument with your partner because you were right, but you still both went too far? And that's what it was for me. It was, okay, yep, I'm vindicated, I was right, but I spent so many years in my head just so angry, so upset.
You follow the principles of restorative justice. And our society still largely works on punitive justice. But in restorative justice, it's always about bringing victim and perpetrator together. And the opening sentence is, what is it you need the other person to know?
Yeah.
And the other person listens. So you went in with that. I need you to know this, and this. I want you to know it and acknowledge it, even if it's a blank email. And then she did. Was she devastated? Yeah.
You want to talk shame?
She felt really ashamed.
Oh, yeah.
And guilty.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
So she was devastated.
Yeah.
That's what you'd wanted, but you'd also wanted her to... This is such an interesting topic to me, because they say hurt people. When we're really hurting, we want to hurt others, right?
And that's exactly how I felt.
That's the revenge fantasy. Yeah. But then if we really look into that, if the person we hurt because we're hurting, do we really heal?
She was a 16-year-old girl. Let's take me out of the equation. She made a decision. That's how it ended up. And she had to wear that. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Can you imagine having said that about someone?
And she probably didn't have the wherewithal to go back and say, actually, I lied.
She was in too deep.
She's in too deep.
I went to Brazil in February of 1999. When I was in Brazil, all of a sudden, clean slate. No one knew. No one could even pronounce my name in Brazil. So it was the best opportunity I had to start again. And so I did, and life started improving, and that all started to improve until one day I jumped on the scales and saw 96 kilograms again, which was the weight I was when I started to get sick. And I remember thinking to myself, oh, that's cool, man. I'll just go and be sick again. And I couldn't do it. There was no drive. I remember starving myself one day there, and I was going to go kick a soccer ball over the road, and I started to get the stars. I was going to pass out. I was going to faint. I could feel it coming. And so I did deep breathing, and I started to work my way back. And I remember that day going, I can't do this anymore. What the hell am I doing? And that's when I realized that I was sick, man. I'd never considered it a disease before. And it's when you realize that that's an action I can no longer take. Then that's sort of when it sat with me and went, oh my God, I was sick for a really long time. And then I became really, really happy, because it felt like at that moment, all of that anxiety and that pain was over, because I was in the popular group at my Brazilian high school because my best mate was the most popular dude at high school. And so all of a sudden I had this new identity where no one knew the story and none of it mattered. And when I returned from Brazil, I wasn't at high school anymore. That was all over.
There is some magic in moving to a new country because you get to reset your identity that's been built up over so many years in your hometown, which can be quite hard to break away from, and you just get to start fresh.
The only problem with that is the lack of integration or the lack of incorporation of that old identity. But at some point, I think across the lifespan, we need to find a way to integrate, to get a whole narrative that sort of hangs together. And in doing so, and I think you did that in writing her that letter, you can own it now as very much so as part of your story. But I do know of people who've rejected their old identity completely, thinking that's the past, I'm going to build a new one. It doesn't work out very well in the long run usually.
No.
Because consciously you can't fully escape these tendencies and habits that lifestyle created in you, can you?
No.
Yeah. Have you met any other males who've had eating disorders?
No.
You've never?
No, never have.
Not that you know of?
No. Not that I know of, but like I said, it was such a weird thing. You read statistics, and I knew I was one of these statistics, but no one's ever talked about it. You can, I've seen TV shows about people with eating disorders that feature all women.
I've met one or two, and it's not common, but I think the more common thing is nobody talks about it.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Of all the techniques you tried to cope with the trauma at that time, so you tried some alcohol and there was drugs, you moved to Brazil, you must have tried multiple methods.
Yeah.
What can you give us an honest account of all the different approaches you tried and what worked and what didn't?
Swimming, I think, was very effective, but in saying that, school in Brazil finished at 12:30, which was amazing. Now, if you're an exchange student,
Go to Brazil
and because we'd finish at 12:30. I'd catch the bus home. I would eat lunch, which is dinner, biggest meal of the day, and we'd have a siesta. I'd go back on the bus back to school. I'd meet my friends. We'd go smoke a big joint, and then we'd swim 3 kilometres in the
What's it
YMCA
like
pool.
To swim after smoking a big joint?
I'll tell you, Ashwin, it is like crocodiles are chasing you, because that's what I thought every single time, because I saw the movie Lake Placid, which came out that year, and so I always felt like crocodiles were chasing me.
Sounds like so much fun.
It really is, because they're not, but they could be.
I don't mean that.
Because you can't see, because you can only see in your periphery, so anything could be behind
It's
you.
not out of the realms of possibility for the Amazon as well, is it?
No, but it definitely is for the YMCA pool.
Guys, and constantly surprised at the situations I find myself in, and what a trip this life has been, man. It didn't start out so easy for me, man. I grew up in a foster home, and I always had this weird guilt that the other foster kids had it worse than I did, mainly because the people who ran the foster home were my real parents. It was in New Zealand, man. It was in New Zealand. It would have been a fuckload easier in New Zealand than Australia, because everybody knows Australians hate fosters.
How are things for you at the moment?
Recently, I've had to take some time off doing gigs. I'm a fairly anxious person, and I hear other people talk about anxiety, and I look and think, I'm not like that. That is not how it is for me. It's, I think, because I've had so many years of dealing with really heightened emotions around anxiety, I'm a pretty happy person. I've not really been too depressed as far as mental health goes. Anxiety is by miles my biggest problem. But I've just recently been doing some gigs where I've been doing really well, but I'm walking away from it without that same feeling of satisfaction that I've had previously. And I just noticed I was starting to enjoy it a little bit less. And so I cancelled a few gigs, and I've been doing roughly one a week because I run a gig in Surfers Paradise, and I've just been going to do that. But even then I had to cancel that a couple times and just let other people do it. And ever so slowly I felt it coming back to me. And I'm feeling pretty good now. I had the opportunity to do a gig tonight, and I went, no, still just not quite, but I'm about back to where I was. But I got a really good awareness of when I feel my mental health slipping. I tell you one thing that this is probably really pertinent. I often got seasonal depression. In the month of August, which is when the incident happened with the girl, in the month of August, strange things happen to me. I just lose my zest for life. Everything just drops a little bit, and it's not even that bad, but something's not right, and I feel that way. I feel like often my life is like popping candy, and then in the month of August, sometimes it's just candy. There's no more popping, and that's sort of how it felt for me, and that did happen this August, and that was when I think I was talking to your producer, and I was going through a little bit of that at that stage. And then September came along, and usually it sort of wanes and things improve for me come September, and that didn't happen right away. And so, yeah, I just took that time out and just took my mind out of it. I don't even know if I've written a joke in the past little while. I feel great for it. I feel much better for that, for taking that time.
I think it is pertinent, and it's good for listeners to know that human beings, seasons or times of the year, times of the day, sometimes certain days of the week, because we have such a deep, visceral association between, for you, winter and what happened, it's a very common thing that you have this very powerful unconscious reaction beyond your control.
Yeah. And I think what I would do since starting comedy is I would try and line up the most amount of gigs in the month of August, so that I was busy, always thinking about stuff. And I think that did not serve me well this year. I don't think that served me very well this year at all. I think that was very much this year is when I needed to process and just step back a bit. And because as a comedian, I punish myself. You haven't written today. Oh, shouldn't be that. I feel guilty watching TV because I should be writing, because I should be creating content, not watching content. But juggling that between being a good dad to 3 kids, being a good husband to my wife, it's all a juggle. And I love it when I meet other comedians. They're like, oh, how do you do it? It feels normal to me. It does. It feels really normal to me to juggle those things. I'd rather not. I'd rather do comedy at 4 p.m. Don't get me wrong, but that's the nature of the beast. Yeah.
I find there are some times that it's just easier to write a joke or to be creative than other times when you're relaxed and chilled out. It's interesting, that point you make, Rachel, that sometimes we think of ourselves as these disembodied bags of flesh, and we're independent of nature and cycles and seasons.
And we're not.
But we're not. We're totally connected to them. And not just natural seasons, but an event that happened to you 20 years ago, re-echoing at that same time
calendar.
of year.
A lot of people say that, on a certain date of the year when something happened, they'll notice something's a bit off. They feel a bit weird, and then they'll look at the calendar.
In saying that as well, if anyone's had anything like that, try not to breathe more life into it than it needs. There was a period of 3 or 4 years where it didn't happen at all.
Yeah.
And that was wonderful. The shock for me this year was what's normal for me is I get this. It usually lasts a very short space of time. It goes away. I'm back to my normal self. And I usually come back so much stronger on the other side that these are the months where I write the most. I do the best work. And that didn't happen. It sort of, I still felt a little bit anxious running into September, even up until, say, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And now I'm really, last few days, last week and a half, really come back to myself. And I can't wait to go back out on stage, but I'm being very mindful about jumping a day too soon, a week too soon. I live on the Gold Coast. I'm not going to make it as a bloody famous comedian on the Gold Coast anytime soon. So just take a little bit of time, and who knows, what I'm going to get from that time will probably make a lot better of what I'm going to produce in the future.
You've been listening to Help Me, I'm a Comedian. I'm Ashwin Segkar, and you've been hearing from comedian Hayden Foote and psychologist Dr Rachel Hannam.
ABC Radio.
There's lots of possibility.
There's a lot of amazing people here.
I love being here because I learn something new every single day.
Great place to live, wouldn't live anywhere else.
It's just lovely.
You almost get a bit teary, to be honest.
This is ABC Radio.